this area.
Students and staff.
There's an intruder in the building.
Students here showing how they would react if there were an intruder in their school. They are learning how to make a decision in the moment.
If anything dangerous happens, I know exactly what to do.
We will actually simulate gunshots in the classroom. When we reached out and told parents we were going to do this, not one person in our community had any complaints.
Well, for schools, it's an ongoing lesson on how to respond to violent critical incidents. Joining us in studio, we have Brian Shellman. Brian is with Tier 1 Tactical Solutions. They're a local company that trains schools, businesses, and places of worship on critical incidents, how to prepare, and how to respond to active shooter or intruder situations. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jasmine.
So here we are, early August. How busy are you guys as we think of going back to school?
Yeah, for sure. You know, the types of trainings that we do, and you kind of mentioned some of the places that we would train, but the crux and the majority of what we do is with our local school districts. So obviously with school starting to ramp up, we actually just held 2 instructor type level courses to train some of the staff, faculty, teachers who will also become instructors with us moving into the school year. We just had 2 of those instructor level courses over the past month, finished one up yesterday actually. And we are, August is always a busy time for us, August and September with the start of the school season.
You know, it's one thing to have staff and students to go through, the other types of drills, fire drill, earthquake drill. This is a whole different ball of wax. Can you describe the type of training that you do at a school? Yeah, for sure. And I'd like to mention, as you just said, these places go through these fire drills. I mean, they're mandatory, right? They're mandatory by state. When we do these trainings, we always ask these teachers, hey, when's the last time you did a fire drill? And it's rhetorical because we know that they do them. But then we say, when's the last time you've done an active shooter or active killer type of event drill? And, of course, the answer is, well, we don't. And unfortunately, it hasn't been, we can turn on national news almost at any point, see another horrific event that's happened. So the way that we do these trainings is really we base it off of what we call the 4 E's, and that's educate, evade, escape, and engage. And it's an option-based training. We want to empower people to be able to make decisions in critical times and when that stress is at an all-time high. Can you give us some examples of what any of those would come into play? Yeah, for sure. Obviously, educate is the piece that we're kind of talking about today, and that's the crux of what we start talking about. Evade just means to barricade, to try to put something between yourself and any type of intruder, somebody trying to harm yourself or the children. Escape, obviously, as we know, would just be to get away as far as you can. And then engage, the last resort that most people would think about when they face somebody that is armed is to engage themselves when they aren't armed with some type of firearm. But there are very many success stories out there, actually more than not, to where you see actual heroes every single incident that we have where somebody stepped up and was able to help by engaging these active killers. I think of Central Visual Performing Arts and Jean Kuchka, who was telling her students to, they're trying to open the window and the students were trying to get out. I mean, she is being called, and she was, it was sad, it was tragic, but absolutely, she protected some of her students. She saved their lives, and tragically she lost hers. But you're thinking in a moment's notice. Absolutely, and I mean, those are the heroic things that we try to ask these teachers to do. Who are the true first responders in the community? When we think about it, we think of the police, fire, EMS personnel. But in an event like this, I mean, when we're talking about the average response to an active killer event in the United States is roughly around 3 minutes, think about the eternity that 3 minutes is while active gunfire is in your school. So we ask and we try to, when we put these people into places to say, hey, you are the true first responders, and give them the options to do something until help arrives. How does your training differ with, you do mainly staff, but how does it differ with students? At the beginning of this segment, we showed kids. Sure. I think that was Hancock Place Middle School. They were one of the first in the area to actually involve children. I believe, the difference? Yeah, I believe they were actually the first in the area.
what we teach, if we're talking about students, what we teach high school age students is not going to be the same as kindergartners. With kindergartners or those low-level elementary, I mean, we don't mention things like guns. We don't mention things like bad people. But we talk about things of the nature of, hey, what happens if you come to your classroom and Mrs. Smith, for instance, has the door locked? Not to just stand there, just to do something, find another adult. And then obviously the way that high schoolers are wired and nowadays, I mean, they know what's going on in the world, so we're a little bit more upfront with them. And, we treat them a little bit more like teachers because they're adults and they understand the world. But, yeah, the different levels of training all the way from kindergarten all the way up to seniors in high school. And then, obviously, the faculty is completely different and tailored to those specific situations.
And tailored to the type of building. If you have schools that have a more open plan versus ones that don't, I mean, you have to familiarize yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing we do. Like I just told you, over these past 2 days, we did that instructor course at the district that we trained this at. The building none of us had ever actually been to, and each building presents different challenges as far as the training goes because nothing's a cookie cutter. But it allows us to do a walkthrough and make that to that building. That way the teachers and the faculty and staff can see, okay, this is what's specific to my school.
I had read that more schools are trying to, there was one locally in the St. Louis area, in fact, that moved to a more closed environment so as to prevent the possibility of an active shooter or intruder in an open air situation. And I think about the Trump rally,
sure,
which was open air, and of course there were definitely some shortcomings in security there. But in terms of how protecting students.
Yeah, and when we talk about open air, when we do these scenario-based trainings for our district. Now, again, I'm not trying to liken this to the Trump rally, but my point is we have open spaces inside of these schools, i.e. cafeterias, libraries, gymnasiums, to where you may have a large congregation of people at one time and telling them on how to deal with the situation from there rather than just inside of their classrooms.
Is there one takeaway for people who are watching about, because this is not just about schools, this is any environment?
Absolutely. And that's what we talk about too, is when we do these trainings, we say, hey, listen, we're at your school, but these are things that you can take every day in every walk of life. Situational awareness. Like, those are the two words that we hear all the time, but it is so true. We had a talk with some folks up in North County that had us out recently, and there was a rash of carjackings going on. Again, I never blame, and no law enforcement around the area would ever do this, but blame the victims of that. But just simply by being aware of your surrounding and what's going on, a lot of the victims will say that when they're victims of things like this, where do you think they are? Heads in the phone, not right, yeah. Exactly, they're distracted. So just being aware of what's going on can just help mitigate that.
That is fascinating. And you do these kinds of trainings at businesses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A ton of businesses inside of St. Louis County, St. Louis City. We've gone as far north, our company now, up through Chicago to train some of the districts up there, businesses, churches, things of that nature.
I think of, I guess it was, 2008, Kirkwood City Hall tragedy.
Yep.
You had 2 officers shot, people at City Hall shot, but there was a hero who emerged from that.
Yeah, that's
situation.
Right. Yeah, John Hessel, who, again, that was, and rightfully so, highly publicized, highly politicized. And, when Cookie Thornton entered that building and took 6 lives that day, if it weren't for the actions of somebody like Mr. Hessel, who literally used a chair to begin stopping that before the Kirkwood PD came in and had to deal with the threat, those are the true heroes. But again, I guarantee you that most of your listening audience had no awareness that somebody stepped up outside of law enforcement to become that actual hero. And
going back to the 4 E's, that he was engaging him, but he was also evading him at the time. So that really, I mean, and that also just goes into how quickly people process. That's right. For some people, it might be 1 second. Others, it might be slow motion. Yeah. You see something happening in front of you.
Yeah, since we were all young, right, we heard of fight, flight, freeze. Well, the majority of humans in high-stress situations, human behavior classes will show you that the majority of humans freeze in those. But as you said, I don't know, if something were to happen right here, maybe it takes me 10 seconds to come out and maybe you 1.2 seconds. We don't know until we're thrust into that. But having those options and doing a little bit of the training can at least try to spur your mind inside of the moment. We try to push that adrenaline and that stress level just a little bit so people make those right decisions.
And as you emphasize situational awareness in any setting, whether you think you're in your neighborhood or out, at the grocery store, important to be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, that's right. And we're not telling people to be, not everybody is a bad person, but just understanding it doesn't take, really that much as you're walking your groceries to your car and maybe it's late at night. Just to be head on a swivel, kind of looking around rather than pushing your cart with one hand, looking at the cell phone with another, just being aware. That way you see somebody, hey, your reaction time is a lot quicker. And again, we talk about mitigating the factors of those folks becoming victims, and those are the things to do.
All right, some really good information. Thank you so much to Brian Shellman with
Thank you.
Tier 1 Tactical Solutions. Straight ahead on the